Hi Aries, this is your June 2016 horoscope with me, Lada from Astrolada.com. For anyone who has their ascendant, sun or moon in Aries, make sure you check at least your ascendant sign, because many people only check their sun sign often. But if you want to have more information, more in-depth information and more specific, tangible results, also check your ascendant sign. If you have time, also check your moon sign if you know what it is. And I'm putting a birth chart calculator here, a link to the birth chart calculator. You can find out the sun, moon and ascendant from the planetary detail table. Anyway, what does June hold for Aries? Well, the month, especially the first 2 weeks, are under the influence of something in astrology we call a grand square. This is when planets are sitting on a square, like on a cross from each other. And it's almost like a person might feel like they're stretched, like on a cross somehow. And it's considered a difficult psychological combination because big changes are happening when planets are sitting on a cross from each other. And it's a rare combination. We have almost all the planets involved in that square. We have Venus, the Sun, Mercury joins at a certain period as well, Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune. We have 6 planets out of the 9 planets that exist that are situated on this cross in the beginning. You'll probably feel it from the end of May as well, but the beginning of June, it's when it becomes exact. And a square, a grand square, can turn life around. It's like, imagine if you have a cart that is on square wheels, and the ride is going to be bumpy, but it's going to move. And because a square wheel will make everything jump, but at the same time it propels life forward. It makes big important life changes into our daily life, or into our anything from that's connected to the houses that the grand square triggers. And for Aries, these are the so-called houses of thinking. They're the mental houses. It's the 6th, the 3rd, the 9th of higher thinking, the 3rd of lower thinking, and the 12th house. This is where, how do I say, when there is a grand square there, people observe that changes are happening in the way they perceive reality, in their belief systems in a big way, in the way they think and communicate. There is a big change in their everyday environment, which is the 3rd house, where the Sun, Mercury, and Venus are. There will be some change that is triggered in them, basically the environment around them, the people around them, and their everyday communications can change in a big way. The people that you communicate daily, your daily routines can change in a big way, because Jupiter is in the 6th house, which rules our everyday, day-to-day duties, responsibilities. It rules our workplace as well. So you can expect changes either with friends and relatives, 3rd house, in communications, day-to-day communications, information that you receive. Also through your workplace, your daily routines, your health routines and habits can also turn over, can start having there is a push either from outside or from within, a psychological push that makes you, this cart with square wheels pushes it. And as I said, work can change. The environment at work, your daily routines, your communications, something to do with travel can happen because your 3rd house is triggered by this square. And it might be a bit, kind of tense. You might have to push extra hard, but the results in the long run, always as it is with the universe, in the long term, the results are positive. And then the 9th house is triggered for us Aries as well. The 9th house is how we perceive reality, our philosophical view on life. What do we believe in? What do we consider is worth our time and our efforts? And our vision for the future is the 9th house. Our hopes and wishes for the future as well is our 9th house. So again, something is changing in a big way. 9th house also rules foreign travel, foreigners. So developments in such areas, or higher education. Some of you might decide to pre-qualify, to change the direction of their career in some way by first starting to study something, by traveling in some way as well. And the 12th house is also triggered by Neptune, which is the house of our subconscious. It's the higher consciousness that we are not conscious of, and the subconscious. So all those psychological houses, as they would call them, the houses of thinking, the houses of communications, the houses of how we perceive reality are being triggered. This basically in oh my God, at the beginning of June. So there will be a turning around of our belief systems, especially for Aries. There will be turning around of daily work activities, of daily environment, third house, of the subconscious, how we perceive reality on the subconscious level as well. So usually it might feel more like a psychological tension. It's not necessarily that it gives specific events that happen, but this psychological tension pushes you to make certain changes in your daily activities, in your daily life, in all those areas that I mentioned. So it does not direct affect the Aries. The mutable signs will feel it way more into more specific areas of their life. But our thinking as Aries is changing in a big way, the way we perceive reality. So this is how this grand square will affect you the first couple of weeks. And it's very happening period, because all those planets push in their own direction, and they make us, this pushing creates this tension that makes us move forward in some way. And in the same time, Mars is moving retrograde into Scorpio. And Mars is our planet. Mars rules Aries, Sun, Moon, or Ascendant people. And it's moving back into the sign of Scorpio, which is going to make Aries way more strategic in thinking. It's going to make Aries way more deeper. Usually Aries rush ahead and jump into things. But with Mars going retrograde and in Scorpio basically, which is a sign of it's a very psychological sign. It's a sign of big changes, psychological changes within us. And it's happening in the 8th house for Aries. And it's going to be there for a couple of months, June and July. So there will be psychological transformations on a deep emotional level as well that are happening. And whatever Mars is, when it's retrograde, it requires changes and extra efforts on our part. It requires us to push extra hard to kind of muster up our willpower and to make some kind, almost like a surgical intervention, because Mars is this sharp planet, like a knife. And when it's retrograde, it's extra strong and extra deliberate and extra focused, and it's in your 8th house. So it will require those changes and extra push of willpower in regards to 8th house matters, which can be mutual finances, whether with business partnerships or personal marriage partnerships, or anything to do when or taxes as well. It can be taxes, something that you're changing in regards to how you do taxes, how you budget with your partner or business partners or personal partners. Something to do with inheritance as well. The 8th house is what you inherit, other people's money, what you can receive from other people's money. And you're changing something there. You're putting extra willpower in order to receive, in order to win some battle there, because Mars is this planet that is feisty. It wants to fight. It wants to mobilize our energies. It wants to restructure like a surgeon that area of our life. And the 8th house is to do with anything to do with mutual resources, shared values, shared finances, with money if you expect from a bank, for example, money that you expect from someone to return you, or some resources that you're reliant on from other people or organizations of some sort. You might have to restructure, change something. But the 8th house is also the house of our subconscious fears, is the house of trauma. This is where the memory of trauma is kept in our subconscious. And when Mars goes there, retrograde is going to stir up that muck from the bottom of our psychology, and will make us almost like fight for or strive to change something on a deep psychological level that removes, again, like a surgical operation from us, certain fears, certain obsessions and compulsions that we haven't faced for years. And that is time for us to face. Mars retrograde in the 8th house will face us exactly with this more darker side of us, because 8th house rules our shadow side, rules our insecurities, rules our irrational fears, paranoias, rules also anything to do with, something bit me, rules also anything to do with psychological transformation. So it's almost like it can be an amazing time for deep self-analysis, for even working with a psychologist to get to the root and bottom of some trauma from the past that is probably self-sabotaging you or causing you to have self-destructive habits or self-sabotaging, self-destructive actions towards yourself. And Mars, like a laser beam, will focus your attention there and will bring out to the surface certain secrets and over the next, in June and July, you'll feel it very strongly. And by the end of this process, very likely when Mars starts moving direct, you'd have more healthier psychology. You'd have overcome certain fears, certain compulsions and obsessions, because 8th house rules that, and even certain self-destructive behaviors. And you'd have overcome it through the precision of Mars using it as a scalpel, psychologically, or even through some kind of energy healing, possibly, or through some kind of someone pointing out towards exactly where those issues are coming, and you understanding it on a deep level and making some big changes. But this is one of the most transit that I've observed. When someone has Mars retrograde in transit in their 8th house, this is when the biggest psychological changes in life happen. And in extreme cases, it might even involve some kind of surgical procedure, because 8th house rules surgeries, and Mars is the scalpel, is the knife. But again, if they're happening, Mars will help with that. And Mars will help you have a very much focused and concentrated energy in regards to sorting all those 8th house matters: mutual finances, shared values, shared possessions, taxes, inheritances of some sort, resources of others, and deep psychological transformation, which releases fears and which strengthens your willpower. So, you know, people always say, oh, Mars is retrograde, you shouldn't do anything. Actually, the most important work we do is when Mars is retrograde. And those areas that I mentioned, 8th house areas, they can get more complicated when Mars is retrograde there. But only because they require our attention and our focused willpower in that direction. So we can make some change. Otherwise, we'll never make changes if nothing gets a bit more complicated, if nothing gets more escalates in some way. And Mars retrograde there will exactly escalate all those matters that I talked about, even through some tension. And at the same time, the Grand Cross is helping us see reality from a very different perspective, and to, you know, this will definitely help in the psychological transformation process that is happening. But for a lot of areas, this can be like a peak period, because the 8th house rules all the biggest changes in life, all sudden transformational changes in life, and our planet is there, retrograde, which happens like once every 17 years, or even more rarely. So get ready, you know, for that. So some will feel it on the psychological level only, and releasing first those fears escalating in obsessions and paranoias, but then after the process, it's like a transmutational process. It's a process of chemical, how do we say, like a catharsis of a sense. And after that, you'll be able to start moving ahead, especially from July when Mars turns direct. From the end of June, basically, the beginning of July, when Mars turns direct, all those problems, 8th house matters that I mentioned, shared resources, psychological traumas, pain from the past, will start getting unsolved. You'll be able to start moving ahead again. You'll be able to start untangling that more complicated situation and seeing the positive results. So this is what I see for you, Aries. Mercury is also going to be moving direct already from the end of May, basically. So, you know, things will start, and Jupiter is moving direct in June already. So things will start happening, you know, more. We can progress forward more, but there is a deep psychological transformation happening for you, and there is a big psychological as well, a big mentality change in our mentality. So thank you very much. Subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next month.